안녕하세요.
Night had settled over Seoul, with its vibrant lights reflecting off the glass windows of Kang Group, one of the country's largest corporations. At the top of the building, Kang Ji-ho sat in his spacious office, surrounded by piles of documents and computer screens. His exhausting routine left no room for distractions, not even a moment to gaze at the city he ruled with his decisions. On the other side of the building, Yoon Hae-won carried a stack of files as she hurried down the hallways. An employee in the finance department, she struggled to maintain her position in a company that did not tolerate mistakes. It was late at night, and most of the offices were empty, but the urgency to submit reports pushed her to keep going. Suddenly, a misstep. Papers flew across the polished floor as Hae-won tried to regain her balance. When she lifted her eyes, her breath caught as she recognized the man in front of her. Kang Ji-ho, the CEO who rarely left his command tower, was standing there, watching her with his usual cold and distant expression. Ji-ho raised an eyebrow, observing the scene with an inquisitive look. "Are you all right?" Hae-won, surprised by the unexpected concern, quickly gathered the papers scattered across the floor. "Yes, sir. Sorry for the disturbance." He didn't respond immediately. Instead, he crouched down and helped her pick up the documents, a gesture that would have shocked anyone familiar with his relentless reputation. Hae-won stood frozen for a moment, unable to believe that the most powerful man in the company was concerned about her small accident. Ji-ho handed her the papers, and for a brief moment, their fingers brushed. It was quick, but enough to send a slight tremor through Hae-won. She quickly lowered her gaze, avoiding prolonged eye contact. "Working late?" Ji-ho asked as he stood up. Hae-won nodded. "The finance department needs to finalize these reports before tomorrow's meeting." Ji-ho watched her for a moment before responding. "Don't overwork yourself. A mistake from exhaustion can cost more than just a few extra hours." She blinked, surprised by his observation. He, a CEO feared for his demanding nature, was suggesting that she take it easy at work? Before she could respond, he gave a slight nod and walked down the hallway, leaving her alone with her thoughts and an unexpectedly racing heart. That encounter would be the first of many, and unknowingly, Kang Ji-ho had just opened a door that would change her life forever. The days following the unexpected encounter between Kang Ji-ho and Yoon Hae-won unfolded with a strange tension in the air. Hae-won tried to maintain her professional routine, but she couldn't ignore the presence of the CEO. It was as if, somehow, that simple moment in the hallway had created an invisible bond between them. However, Ji-ho remained the same cold, calculating man in meetings. Hae-won knew she couldn't delude herself. To him, that gesture of kindness had probably already been forgotten. But when an unexpected request appeared in her email, her perspective shifted completely. "Report to the executive floor immediately." Hae-won's heart raced. It wasn't common for someone from her department to be called to the CEO's floor without a very specific reason. Taking a deep breath, she adjusted her skirt and headed for the elevator. When she entered Ji-ho's luxurious office, she found him reviewing documents with another executive. His gaze lifted for a brief moment before he gestured for her to come closer. "Sit down. I need your opinion on these reports." His voice was firm, leaving no room for refusal. She sat down, trying to hide her surprise. Why, among so many employees, had he called her? As she reviewed the documents, she realized they were related to an important financial audit. With confidence, she pointed out inconsistencies and suggested solutions. Ji-ho observed her closely. It wasn't just her competence that intrigued him, but also her authenticity. Unlike many who sought to impress him, Hae-won seemed more focused on solving the problem than on pleasing him. When they finished, Ji-ho closed the folder and leaned slightly forward. "You have a talent for this. You should consider a higher position in the company." She blinked, surprised. "Sir, I just did my job." "You did more than that." He held her gaze, and for a moment, something in his expression softened. "I'll request your transfer to the executive department. I want you closer to these reports." Hae-won felt her breath catch. Working directly on the executive floor? That meant being near him constantly. A mixture of nervousness and excitement coursed through her body. "The decision is yours. Think about it. Jai-ho stood up, ending the conversation, but before leaving he added, "And don't work late every night. I warned you." She couldn't help but let out a discreet smile. Perhaps Kang Ji-ho wasn't as impenetrable as he appeared. Yoon Hae-won still felt her heart race whenever she remembered Kang Ji-ho's unexpected proposal. Working on the executive floor was a unique opportunity, but it also meant dangerously getting closer to the most relentless CEO in the company. After a weekend of reflection, she finally accepted the transfer. Now, sitting at her new workstation just a few meters from Ji-ho's office, Hae-won tried to focus on the financial documents, ignoring the curious glances from her colleagues. Everyone seemed surprised by her sudden promotion, and gossip began to spread. Some were saying she had won over the CEO in ways that didn't involve just competence. While she tried to ignore the whispers, her phone rang. The CEO's firm voice filled the line. "Come to my office now." Taking a deep breath, she grabbed her tablet and walked toward the luxurious office. Ji-ho was on the phone but motioned for her to sit. He ended the call quickly and turned his attention to her. "How are you adjusting?" Hae-won kept her composure. "I'm adjusting, sir. Thank you for the opportunity." Ji-ho studied her for a moment, before sliding a stack of documents toward her. "I need you to review these spreadsheets and find any inconsistencies. We're being pressured by investors, and I can't afford any mistakes." She nodded and took the documents. But as she stood to leave, Ji-ho spoke again. "Don't listen to the rumors." His voice was low, but filled with meaning. Hae-won felt her cheeks heat up. Did he know about the gossip? She looked at him, surprised, but found only an impassive gaze. "I don't care about what they say, sir." Her voice was steady, but her heart raced uncontrollably. Ji-ho nodded slowly, as if evaluating her response. "Good, keep it that way." She left the office but couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking a fine line between professionalism and something more dangerous, something that could change her life forever. The days in the executive department passed quickly for Yoon Hae-won, but the tension surrounding her presence seemed to grow in equal measure. Despite her dedication to the work, the suspicious glances from her colleagues and the murmurs about her relationship with Kang Ji-ho never ceased. Ji-ho, on the other hand, remained impenetrable. His treatment of her was professional, but there were moments when his gaze lingered a little too long, or his voice softened slightly when giving her instructions, small gestures that did not go unnoticed by keen eyes. One night, while reviewing reports in the break room, Hae-won was surprised by a familiar voice. "Working late again?" She turned and found Ji-ho leaning against the doorframe. He was wearing only a dress shirt without a jacket, the sleeves slightly rolled up, making him appear less intimidating. "I wanted to make sure everything was in order for tomorrow's meeting, sir." He let out a contained sigh and walked over to the table, resting his hands on the glass surface. "I've told you that overworking can be harmful." She smiled slightly, not looking up from the documents. "And I thought you valued dedication." Ji-ho tilted his head, studying her for a moment. "I do. But I also know when someone is trying to prove something." Hae-won felt her heart race. Before she could respond, he continued, "Are you trying to prove that you deserve this position, or that you don't care what they say about you?" She swallowed hard. Ji-ho wasn't the type to dance around topics, and his question hit her directly. "Maybe a little of both." Her voice came out quieter than she intended. Ji-ho crossed his arms and looked away for a moment before speaking again. "If you've chosen this path, you need to be prepared for the price it demands. From now on, your life will be under constant observation." She couldn't tell if it was a warning or a disguised concern. Before she could ask, Ji-ho grabbed one of the reports from the table and quickly flipped through it. "Finish this tomorrow. I'll take you home tonight." Hae-won's heart raced. "What?" Ji-ho looked up at her, as if his decision was unquestionable. "You're exhausted." Hae-won hesitated, but seeing the sincerity in his gaze, she simply nodded, feeling that little by little the barrier between them was beginning to crumble. The next morning, the entire company was in an uproar. Rumors about Kang Ji-ho and Yoon Hae-won had spread like wildfire. The CEO taking an employee home? No one dared to comment directly, but the glances and whispers were impossible to ignore. Hae-won walked into the office with her head held high, pretending not to be affected. But her composure was tested as soon as the phone on her desk rang. "President Kang wants to see you. Now." It was his assistant, her voice devoid of any emotion. Taking a deep breath, she made her way to the luxurious upper floor where the true power of the company was concentrated. When she entered President Kang Sung Chul's office, the severe gaze of the Kang family patriarch pierced her. "Miss Yoon, sit down." His voice was sharp. She obeyed, maintaining her composure. "I'll be direct. I don't like scandals. My son is destined for something greater than thoughtless entanglements with employees." He interlaced his fingers on the table. "Do you understand what I'm saying?" Hey, Won's heart raced, but her voice remained steady. "I understand, sir, but I haven't made any professional mistakes." Sung Chul's eyes narrowed. "That's irrelevant. What matters is the image of the company and our family. If you're smart, you'll accept my generous offer of voluntary resignation. I can assure you that you won't have trouble finding another job." Before she could respond, the door suddenly opened. "That's not going to happen." Jiho entered the room, his cold and determined gaze fixed on his father. Without asking for permission, he positioned himself beside Hae-won. "Father, if what you're worried about is a scandal, it won't be caused by Hae-won. I made this decision." Sung Chul frowned, surprised by his son's boldness. "Decision? What exactly do you think you're doing, Jiho?" The CEO didn't hesitate. "I'm protecting the woman I've chosen." Hae-won looked at him, surprised. It was the first time Jiho had spoken so clearly about his feelings. The weight of his words filled the room. Sung Chul leaned back in his chair, studying his son. Finally, he let out a heavy sigh. "This isn't over." Jiho took Hae-won's hand and walked out with her, making it clear that he wouldn't back down. The first confrontation had been won, but the battle had only just begun. The confrontation with President Kang marked a point of no return for Kang Jiho and Yoon Hae-won. The CEO knew that challenging his own family would bring consequences, but he also knew that giving up Hae-won would never be an option. His love for her was non-negotiable. The following days were turbulent. Jiho faced internal pressures from the board, veiled threats of being removed from his position, and constant attempts by his father to separate him from Hae-won. The media began to speculate about his future at Kang Group, with headlines that left no room for scandal. CEO abandons legacy for love? Ho and employee romance could destroy empire. Despite everything, he remained steadfast by her side, while Hae-won, in turn, showed her determination to face destiny with him. More than ever, they knew they were in a battle not only against family, but also against an entire society that judged them. One night, Jiho took Hae-won to a special dinner at a private restaurant with a panoramic view of Seoul. The setting was sophisticated, lit by candles, and the city glowed in the background like an ocean of stars. Hae-won noticed his expression was lighter, different from the tension he had been carrying. Something inside her told her that this night would change everything. "I want to share something with you," he said, holding her hands across the table. His touch was warm, firm, and conveyed security. "Today, I finalized my total separation from the family business. My father wanted me to choose between you and the company. I chose you." Hae-won was speechless. Her heart raced. "But Jiho, and your position, your legacy, your empire?" He smiled softly, a smile that mixed relief and absolute certainty. "My legacy is not in my father's company. It's in what I build on my own. And you are the person I want to build my life with. I would go through all of this again, as many times as necessary, if in the end, I still ended up by your side." Her eyes filled with tears. The weight of his declaration was overwhelming. Then, Jiho took a small velvet case from his pocket, revealing a dazzling ring. It was an elegant, yet simple design, perfectly suited for her. The light made the diamond shine intensely, as if reflecting their love. "Hae-won, would you accept to be my wife?" She covered her mouth, unable to contain her emotions. The moment felt like a dream, but it was real. Her heart screamed the answer before her lips could even move. "Yes," she replied with a choked voice, smiling through her tears. The entire restaurant, which had been dining in silence and discretion, applauded the romantic scene. Jiho smiled and slid the ring onto her finger, sealing the promise of a future together. They embraced right there, not caring about the curious looks. Nothing else mattered. They got married in an elegant yet intimate ceremony, surrounded only by those who truly supported them. Jiho, now at the helm of his own company, proved that his success did not depend on the Kang family. His decision to give up the family empire turned out to be the right one, as he managed to build something even greater, with his own vision and integrity. Haewon, by his side, continued to excel professionally, proving that her presence had never been a mistake or a whim. Years passed, and together they built a family based on love, respect, and the certainty that, despite the obstacles, they had chosen each other. On a peaceful afternoon, Haewon walked through the garden of their new home, watching Jiho play with their young daughter, who laughed as she was lifted in her father's arms. She smiled, feeling that every battle they had faced had led them to this moment of complete happiness. And this time, no one could separate them anymore.